Hey folks, it's Ben. We're here with a kind of a step-by-step guide process on how to change the digitizer on an iPad. In this case, we're going to be doing this on an iPad 6th generation, but I can tell you honestly it's going to be the same for a 7 or an 8 as well. Very few differences between the two. Now the digitizer is the part that you actually touch on your iPad, so that's the part that typically cracks. There's actually an LCD screen beneath it, and you'll see it when we take it all apart, but that's the part that the image comes from. So if you have an image that's broken and stuff like that, you actually need a different part. This is just to repair what's broken on your iPad. So in this case, as we kind of scroll through these photos here, you can see that this one's quite broken. In fact, there are holes in the top where the camera is located. It's been broken for so long, so it's really about time to replace this one out. Now, before you do anything, you want to turn it off. So you got to hold down the power button, slide to power the unit off, let it power down before you start hacking this thing apart. In here we can see the back of the Apple case. First thing we need to do to get this thing open is actually get a heat gun. You can use a hairdryer, but a heat gun is so much faster. And what you'll actually want to do is run your heat gun around the edge of the iPad. And what we're doing here is we're softening the glue, because the screen is actually glued to the base of the iPad. So we're actually going to run the heat gun maybe for 5 minutes or so. You can feel by touch how hot it's going to be. You need to get it warm. That'll get the glue gooey, and then you can start actually prying it apart here. Now, you can see it's called a Zen Top, but it's actually a neat little cutting device. It came with one of the screens I have. Most screens come with some sort of prying device there, and when your screen's really bad, you can pretty much just rip the thing off. Trying not to A, touch the LCD screen below it, of course, right? And B, not cutting yourself on all the sharp glass. Most kits do include like a suction cup to kind of pull away, and then you can use plastic tabs to work the glass away from the base, the aluminum base of the iPad. But in the reality is in this case, it's so bad, it's easier just to rip the darn thing off. But what happens is you get left with these little scrap pieces all around the edge, and then you do have to scrape those off because we need to make space for the new screen. So we've got that to do. So here we have essentially our base that's now all clean, and you can see the LCD screen. Don't touch this if you don't have to, is ultimately what I'm trying to describe here. This is the part that, we're going to be covering up with glass again, so we'll clean it before we put it all back together. But yeah, long story short, just don't get it dirty. If it's got lots of broken glass on it, though, we're going to have to blow all that stuff off. Now, here's the connectors to our new screen. You can see them in the box here. And here we can see the connectors I kind of ripped off on the old screen, but they actually kind of dip underneath the LCD screen. You'll see a little bit more later. And what we're going to be doing now is actually taking the LCD off. So there's 4 screws that hold it on there. They might be covered up with black tape, but note that they are on all 4 corners of the screen. So as I'm throwing away more plastic material here, there's 1 screw, 2 screws, 3 screws, 4 screws. There we go. So we take those out with the provided screwdriver. It's a very, very small size. And once that, you can lift it where the camera is, so the top of the iPad, you can lift it up, and that gets you access to underneath the screen. And the neat thing about that is that you're going to need to release this little steel cage here. And this is where your variance between Gen 6 and 7.8 happen, is that there are 3 little micro screws here. They're all the same depth, so don't worry about mixing them up. But when you release these screws, on the Gen 6, the cable that is for the LCD is actually connected to it. So when you pull it off, you're actually disconnecting the LCD screen. And at this point, you can then set it aside. Now, in this case, when I removed the screen, I ripped out, essentially, the cable here. And so I think I'm holding up now one that kind of looks like it. From the top of the from the top of the iPad, you'll actually lift a little tab towards the bottom, and that actually releases that cable, or in this case, that you put the new cable in. There's a sticker over it. It's black, so you'll want to peel that sticker off, and I've shown a picture of it right here. I actually forgot to put it back on afterwards, but anyway, you open that up, that lets you in, and so now what we're looking at is a cleared off base. Now, important thing about this picture is that I've got it next to a notepad and a coffee can. And the reason for that is I need to get when we do put the new screen on, we need to have it slightly elevated and we need to have it held upright because the cables don't have a lot of play in them. There's not much space to put them in. So we've got them elevated up there, and you can see where now I've kind of got the screen on the notepad. I've got the iPad down on the table, and I'm using the coffee can to keep the screen from falling over. And at this point is where you kind of have to mess with that connections, and you'll see they'll line right up, and you got to click them in, and they'll go click, and it'll be nice and flat, and you'll feel that connection. I don't think I've got a great picture of it here, unfortunately, but you click those two in, and then you come back with your LCD screen and you pop that connector back in. And with this case, actually with the Gen 6, it's kind of nice because you line up all the bolt holes, and that also lines up your connector, and you snap it right in there. I know with the 8th generation one, you're kind of messing around with it, trying to get the plug to line up to go in correctly. So in this picture here, we've got our connectors on now again, and we're putting the screws in, and now we lay the digitizer, or I should say the LCD down on its base. Now, thing to note here is that you see the cable for the touch button. We did not replace the touch, well, we did replace the touch button. We took the old one and we're not putting it back in. The reason for that is the new screen comes with a touch button that's all set up and ready to go. You will lose your Touch ID ability, unfortunately, because we're changing hardware, but it's a much better installation. In regards to that, there's a little bracket that holds the home button in, and it's definitely not something I want to mess with, break. Sometimes you'd have to glue it back on. I'm like, just keep the button that it comes with for now and get your iPad working again, right? Now, I don't actually show the screen here, but what we've actually done is once you have all your connections made, you can turn it on. And so turn on your iPad, it'll fire up, your screen is to the side, you'll see the LCD screen exactly, and it will turn on, and this is when you can test it to make sure all your cables are connected in correctly and that it's going to work for you, so we can finish closing this up. And this is the part I love, is that I can actually test it before I actually seal it up again. You'll have to kind of guesstimate where your buttons are, like if you have to type in a code, you'll type in your code, and then, but you can check the screen motion, the swiping, if everything is working, and be sure to check the home button as well. Great. Power it back down, and then we can go back to putting it back together. At this point, we peel the plastic screen off, and actually I peel all the back adhesives off, or the protectors off all the adhesives that you see. So in this case, you can see on the bottom down here, there's 3, because this whole video cable actually glues to the back of the screen. I maybe go over that in a little bit in a second here. So we peel all that off. We peel off all the little adhesive protection around the screen as well, so that's all taken off. And also in this little picture here, there's the little touch button cable. The little touch button cable also has it, and it will actually glue to the screen too. Now in this kit, it's a little bit not so great. You actually have to peel back. There's a plastic protection layer on both sides of the screen. You have to peel that back a little bit so you can lay that cable onto the actual glass part. It wants to actually lay on the protective layer, but obviously when you go to take it off, that would be problematic. So we kind of peel that back, and then we lay the glue on there. You'll also note that the wiring for the touch button needs to lay flat against the glass and go flat underneath the LCD. So you'll need to just mess with that so that it's a nice flat run. It can be a little bunched up underneath the screen, but everything on top here has to be flat, flat, flat. Now we're dealing with this edge here, and when we put the screen down, I think at this point we've actually removed the plastic. We need to make sure that folds over and glues to the back of the glass. So when you lay it down, typically what will happen is the side that's the most open in this shot, you will lay against the iPad, and then you'll work your way back, and you'll take a plastic tool and push the cable glue there essentially in towards the LCD. And then when you squish it down to seal the deal, it'll actually adhere itself to the back of the screen, and you'll know you've got it right because it'll lay flat. The key here is not to force anything. And also to make sure, and I kind of should have said this earlier, that if your thing is dented, your case, you'll need to get those dents out so your new screen will fit in a lot better. In this case, it wasn't dented. We just laid it on down there. Now, I'm going to take an additional step. Here, I'm actually peeling the outer protective glass off here, and you can see that. What I'm doing is I'm actually taking some clear tape. And I do this because I've got kids and they're fairly abusive. And if that glue doesn't quite hold down great, it's not going to get, it'll start popping up, and kids who pick at things will start picking at it, and you're going to get your digitizer to pop off. So that's not cool. So what I actually do is take a clear masking tape, a shipping tape or whatever, not a masking tape, but a clear tape like this, lay it along the top edge of the screen, even though technically it's glued down. And then I make sure everything's nice and tight, and fold it over. And what that does, it is actually holds the tape physically holds the screen down to the case. Plus the screen is got glue on it, so it's being stuck to the case, and you're just making an awesome, you're just making it so it's not going to break again. In this case, we put it on both sides. I put the extra tape on the bottom. Nobody cares about the bottom. Typically, theirs are going to go into a protective case anyway, so that'll just keep it safe like that. Here we go. You can easily take a peek here, and we got our screen fired up, and all the touch controls work, and we are good to go. But we already knew that based on when we did our little test. So if you have any questions on this is just kind of I've done an iPhone, how do I do an iPad type of guide. It's actually fairly easy. You just kind of have to be confident in what you can do. If you have an old one, would obviously be the best one to try. Prices for these are about $30 on Amazon, so there's not an expensive thing to do, but it is something to try. And so I've done actually 3 now. The first one I did, then it popped off and the kid kind of wrecked it, so we had to buy another one, and I was much better at the second one, and this is number 3 for me. So if you have any questions, ask them, and if you have any comments, leave those too. And be sure to subscribe to our channel, Red Barn Homestead, for more amazing, awesome videos. You guys have a good day.